You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. A car bomb at a police headquarters in Turkey's Kurdish southeast kills 11 and leaves more than 70 wounded. Lebanon Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil submits the 2017 state budget to the cabinet, the first in over a decade. And a U.S. Navy ship fires warning shots after an Iranian fast attack craft approaches two U.S. ships in the northern Gulf. Good afternoon to all our viewers tuning in. A car bomb at a police headquarters in Turkey's largely Kurdish southeast killed at least 11 and left more than 70 wounded 2 days after Turkey launched an incursion against Islamic State militants and Kurdish militia fighters in Syria. The state-run Anadolu news agency blamed the attack on the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as PKK, which has been involved in almost daily clashes with security forces since a ceasefire collapsed more than a year ago. However, there was no immediate claim of responsibility. It is still not clear whether the casualties were civilians or police officers. Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil submitted a 2017 state budget to the cabinet, the first in over a decade. Khalil said that he hopes the cabinet will study and pass the budget and refer it to the parliament in due course. He also announced his intention to submit the draft budget 2 days ago and said the cabinet must immediately hold successive meetings to approve the budget within the time frame prescribed by the Constitution, despite the problems that the government is facing. Ministerial sources had said last Friday that at least 3 major obstacles could torpedo the draft 2017 fiscal plan, including the $11 billion spent by former Prime Minister Fuad Sanira's government between 2005 and 2009, the financing of the Special Tribunal for Lebanon, and calls for including a long-standing wage hike bill for civil servants into the budget. The Army intelligence arrested 2 Syrian men accused of preparing explosive bombs in the northern district of Al-Qura this morning. The 2 men, whose names were not identified, planned to carry out the bombing on the outskirts of Dede in Qura. They are accused of mixing explosive materials together for the purpose. Now, the national news agency says that the accused were referred to related judiciary people for interrogations. Thousands of rebels and civilians, many in tears, prepared to evacuate the Syrian town of Daraya after a 4-year army siege and a blow for the beleaguered opposition. The evacuation comes after a deal struck by President Bashar Assad's government and opposition forces in the town, which is close to the capital, Damascus, and is one of the first to rise up against his regime. Earlier this morning, ambulances and Syrian Red Crescent vehicles entered the devastated town, which has been surrounded by loyalist troops since 2012 and suffered constant regime bombardment. Inside the town, residents bid farewell to each other as well as their homes and neighborhoods. The rebels would have to surrender other armaments to the army. A Syrian source on the ground says the evacuation could take 4 days to complete, and a military source says the army would enter Daraya. The council says that fighters and their families would be taken to northern Syria, escorted by the Red Crescent. Yemen's rebel-run news agency says airstrikes by the Saudi-led coalition have killed 11 civilians and wounded others in the northern city of Saada. The Saba agency, which is under control of the rebels known as Houthis, reported that the airstrikes located and destroyed 2 houses in the district of Bakam in the city of Saada, a Houthi stronghold. It says women and children are among the deceased and that subsequent flyovers of coalition planes delayed the rescue operation. Some of the wounded are in critical condition, which may lead to a higher death toll. The strikes come a day after the United Nations demanded an international investigation into the killings of civilians in Yemen. Coming up next, more world headlines. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching the 1620 o'clock news here on Future Television. A U.S. Navy ship fired warning shots after an Iranian fast attack craft approached 2 U.S. ships in the northern Gulf. The Pentagon, in the most serious of a number of incidents in the same area this week, said. The U.S. defense official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said the USS Squall patrol craft fired 3 warning shots after warning flares did not work. The incident, which happened on Wednesday, started with 3 Iranian vessels, but there was only 1 around by the time the warning shots were fired. He described the Iranian behavior as unsafe, unprofessional, and not routine.
In this instance, they did feel compelled ultimately to fire 3 warning shots, and the reason for that is they had used they had taken steps already to try and de-escalate this situation, appropriate steps, including flares, trying to, again, warn the Iranian craft away, and so they felt the need to take an additional step to try and de-escalate this situation, and that was, again, to fire these warning shots. And Barbara, these steps are taken in order to make sure that our crew and our ship, they're able to protect themselves and to try and prevent this from escalating into a more serious situation. They did that. The Iranian craft, as I understand it, left at that point. But again, the onus here is on the Iranians to conduct themselves in a safe and professional manner, like navies all over the world do. And in this instance, in the instance the other day with the Nitsi, in the view of the crew, that did not happen. My understanding is that there may have been, yesterday, 2 incidents involving the Tempest and the Squall. And there was another incident involving another U.S. Navy ship. Quite honestly, I think it was referenced the Stout, and may have involved some of the same Iranian vessels. So you're talking about maybe talking about some of the same craft, but separate incidents. So bigger picture here. These were incidents that, again, the crews deemed that were unsafe and unprofessional. And as to why the Iranians are doing this, I'm going to leave it. You need to ask the Iranians why they're doing this.
In Somalia, al-Shabaab militants attacked a beach restaurant in the capital, Mogadishu, with gunmen raiding the building after setting off a car bomb. Random shooting could be heard as night fell, but it was not clear how many casualties there might be. Al-Qaeda's linked al-Shabaab militants said the group was responsible for the attack. Al-Shabaab carried out a series of deadly attacks in Somalia to try to topple the Western-backed government, and they've been doing that for quite a while. At the scene of the attack, the area near the restaurant had been sealed off by security officers, and the attackers had thrown grenades at the officers and fired at them. An explosion at a sports center in the southern Belgian town of Chimay earlier this morning killed 1 and wounded 4 others. 2 of them are in serious condition. An official at the agency said that it is probably a gas explosion, adding that there was no indication of it being a militant attack. Local media reported the blast occurred just after midnight at a sports center known as Le Chalon in Chimay, close to the French border, where 5 people were still inside the building. Part of that building has been destroyed. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, as the U.S. elections approach, are clashing over who would make a better president for minority voters, accusing each other of posing a threat to the interests of blacks and Latinos. Clinton needs to retain support from minority voters to defeat her Republican rival in the November 8 day, and is delivering a speech in Nevada in which she is blasting him as a divisive candidate, stoking racist groups.
From the start, Donald Trump has built his campaign on prejudice and paranoia. He is taking hate groups mainstream and helping a radical fringe take over the Republican Party. His disregard for the values that make our country great is profoundly dangerous. This is someone who retweets white supremacists online, like the user who goes by the name White Genocide TM. Trump took this fringe bigot with a few dozen followers and spread his message to 11 million people. His campaign famously posted an anti-Semitic image, a Star of David imposed over a sea of dollar bills that first appeared on white supremacist websites. Trump is reinforcing harmful stereotypes and offering a dog whistle to his most hateful supporters. It's a disturbing preview of what kind of president he'd be. And that's what I want to make clear today. A man with a long history of racial discrimination, who traffics in dark conspiracy theories drawn from the pages of supermarket tabloids and the far dark reaches of the internet, should never run our government or command our military. Ask yourself, if he doesn't respect all Americans, how can he serve all Americans?
Former